Hello everyone, my name is Hailey Miller, and today I'm going to be reviewing Rajiv Batra's webinar titled 10 Characteristics of Brand Coolness and How to Engineer Them. So in today's society, many brands thrive and do very well because consumers consider them to be cool. So some examples of very successful and cool brands today include Lululemon, Off-White, Instagram, and TikTok. So even brands that were once considered cool and were even very well funded can sink because they are no longer to be considered cool by the majority of consumers. So some examples of brands that were once considered to be cool but no longer really are include Levi's and Segway. So what this webinar really dove into was what exactly makes a brand cool and how a brand can achieve that. So we'll start with the basics of what really makes a brand cool. And to do that, we have to understand what coolness means. So Warren and Campbell define coolness as a subjective, dynamic, socially constructed, positive trait attributes to cultural objects inferred to be appropriately autonomous. So what that basically means is that it's a socially constructed thing, and it's usually a positive attribute, and it's really in the eye of the beholder. So coolness can mean a variety of things to a variety of different people. And so in order to dig deeper about brand coolness, Mr. Batra and his research team first performed qualitative research and asked a number of consumers the question, what characteristics distinguish cool brands from uncool brands? And so what they found was that cool brands usually have these 10 characteristics listed on this slide. So the 10 traits are being original, authentic, rebellious, subcultural, high status, aesthetically appealing, energetic, extraordinary, iconic, and popular. So brands don't need to have all 10 of these characteristics. They usually have a multiple of these characteristics or some combination of them. They then performed qualitative research by asking consumers to rate certain qualities or some of these 10 characteristics on a scale. And this scale ranged from 1 to 7, 1 being the worst and 7 being the most highly rated. And so the brands that they did during this research, so they had 3 types of brands. One was a mass cool brand, which an example is Nike. It's a cool brand and it applies to a lot of people. And then the next one is niche cool brands. An example of that was Steady Hands. So that's more narrow. It's still a cool brand, but it's more focused and more narrow. And then they also did uncool brands. And one of the brands they used was Gap. So some of the qualities they asked consumers to rate included a brand's originality, their authenticity, rebelliousness, popularity, and status, along with some other traits. So what they found was very closely aligned to what they had as a theory, which was both mass cool and niche cool brands tend to score very well in these 10 different characteristics. However, uncool brands, such as Gap, had repeatedly low scores and they never scored higher than a mass or a niche cool brand in any of these 10 characteristics. So we've basically established what makes a brand cool. So now we're going to kind of dive into what are the payoffs for being cool. So first, consumers have more favorable attitudes towards cool brands. Consumers also have a higher willingness to pay for cool brands, so a higher willingness to pay. And then consumers are also more likely to talk about cool brands, which is also known as positive word of mouth. And then consumers are more likely to love cool brands, which is also known as brand love. And then lastly, consumers feel more connected with cool brands. So there's a lot of different payoffs for being a cool brand. And then how do you measure and manage your brand's coolness? So first you want to measure and evaluate your brand's current level of coolness by using those 10 characteristics and kind of comparing it versus your competition at the component level. So you really see how your attributes line up against your competition. You can also run a regression model and see what aspects of your brand are valued to be most important by consumers. And so then after you figure out those 2 different measurements, you can see where you exactly need to improve. You can see which characteristics you can improve on and where you're also doing well. So for example, if you find that you need to improve on your brand's rebelliousness characteristic, you may consider hiring a rebellious spokesperson. And so this is exactly what Nike did, and Nike is a mass cool brand. That they did this when they hired Colin Kaepernick to be their spokesperson. So that's exactly how they found where they needed to improve. That was their rebelliousness, and they found a way to increase that. And that was by hiring Colin Kaepernick. So I hope you guys learn more about brand coolness, why it's important, and exactly how to achieve it for your brand. Thank you so much.